West Asia seems to be spinning out of control. Is there a way out? Or is it bound to gravitate towards the doom? Welcome, Vanakkam. As I had been observing ever since the commencement of the present phase of the West Asian conflict, the situation in this part of the world, a highly volatile region of the world, characterized by chronic conflict, interrupted peace, ineradicable hatred, and particularly in the name of God and gods, where violence becomes a religious duty and perhaps the only medium of expressing one's loyalty to God, that the problem in this region needs to be viewed from a radically different perspective. And the mere political wisdom, punditry, will not help. Night before the last, the Israel IDF, Israel Defense Forces, reportedly crossed over into Jordan. Now, surely that's an escalation. And as was only to be expected, there was a reaction from Iran, not necessarily or entirely because Israel has expanded the frontier of war by moving into the Jordanian territory, the Lebanese territory, but also because Iranian image, self-respect, patriotism, including fair bit with bravado, all had come under a shadow ever since Israel managed to liquidate Haniyeh, the second in command of Hamas, while he was on a state visit to Tehran, which practically speaking was an attack primarily not on Haniyeh, but an attack on Iran, the sovereignty of Iran. If Haniyeh went there as a state guest, Iran has a duty to protect him, to ensure his physical security. So what Israel did was not a small thing, and Israel was not unaware that it was doing something extremely reprehensive and unacceptable from the Iranian point of view. And I was absolutely clear then, as I am now, that it was done deliberately because nothing perhaps could have provoked Iran better, more, and compelled Iran to do something than liquidating Haniyeh when he was in Tehran to attend the inauguration of the new president, Pezeshkian. Now, if you recall, in one of my earlier videos, I said that ultimately the issue in this region is neither the Hamas nor the Hezbollah, nor how many people should live in Gaza, or how many people should live in the southern region of Lebanon. The ultimate issue in this scenario is whether or not Iran should have a nuclear bomb. I've stated it before, and I'm again restating and reiterating my conviction. This is whole action, this entire bloodthirsty drama is about just one issue: whether Iran should be allowed to have its nuclear bomb. So if my reading of the situation is right, Israel has a need and a determination to attack the Iranian nuclear facility. Now, that is not something that Israel can do just like it did to Iraq in the 80s. I think it was 1983, when 5 or 6 Israeli jets took off, bombed the nuclear facility, or the facility where a nuclear bomb reportedly was being designed or developed in Iraq. Iran is a different proposition as compared to Iraq. So Israel needs to sort of bring in the United States and possibly the allies of the United States. For that, some kind of a preparatory military foreplay is required, and what we have seen so far is nothing but a prelude to the real action. I believe the real action is yet to come. And therefore, you will see retaliation, then retaliation to retaliation, then retaliation to the retaliation of the retaliation, and it will go on, it will spiral until finally, in the opinion of Israel, the time has come to go and drop something on the desired target. Now, while I was thinking of it, what sort of haunted my mind was what's known as revenge tragedies in the English dramatic tradition, especially in the 16th century, revenge tragedies, 17th century. Now, the regular plot of the revenge tragedies is that A will kill B for whatever reasons. A will have good and compelling reasons for killing B. So, B is killed. But B has a relative, maybe a son, maybe a brother, whoever. And B's relative now feels honor bound, duty bound to take revenge on A. So, B's relative, bereaved relative, discharges a sacred duty, honorable duty of killing A. Now, unfortunately, A has his own relatives, maybe a son, a brother, or what have you. He finds it absolutely incumbent on him to wreak vengeance on the assassin of A. So it goes on and on and on and on and on, and there is no end to this trail of blood. This can end only if somebody along this chain of blood, this river of blood, if you like, develops the inspired courage to break out of the compulsions of the sense of honor imposed on him by the culture that prevails, the culture which makes you believe that it's your honorable duty to avenge the death of a dear one. So this chain of bloodshed will end only if someone along this path of blood develops the courage to break out of it and say, well, I don't believe in that honor code or code of honor. I don't believe that I have to necessarily go and take the life of somebody who has done really no personal harm to me in order to avenge the death of so and so. Even if I go and kill that person, I can't bring back the person who is lost to me. It makes far better sense for this chain of blood or this river of blood to stop. And therefore, I stomach the insult and I will not wreak vengeance. I will not avenge the death of so and so. Now then what will happen is, people would say that this man lacks a sense of honor. Furthermore, they will say that this man is not acting according to his natural impulses. He is violating his own nature. Look at him, he's a coward, The society of the times, people who belong to the same cultural perspective would ridicule him. He will be under tremendous pressure from the prevailing opinion that it's honorable to avenge the death in order to redeem the honor of the family. These are all arbitrary assumptions. If you really look at it rationally, if A kills B, it's of no material help to B to have A killed by X, Y, or Z. Psychologically speaking, it can be a great sense of righting the wrong, if you like, for the bereaved family members of B, that a punitive action has been taken against A, the aggressor. But then where does it lead us? It's only of emotional, psychological, and cultural consideration. It really has no material consideration. What is gone is gone. In the ultimate analysis, what is really desirable is to create a society which is free from this kind of violence, where A thinks he has to kill B in order to maybe do justice to himself or avenge the wrong that's been done to him. So ultimately, in the final analysis, the only solution is to abjure or to abandon faith in violence. Now, A feels obliged to kill B because A has put his entire faith in violence. And of course, I have to here point out that historically this outlook, this kind of logic prevailed before the emergence of the rule of law. Not far back in history, right up to the 17th century, if you like. The system that prevailed was that of challenging your adversary to a duel according to the principle might is right. So it was a tremendous leap in civilization when people shifted from their faith in personal violence to the rule of law. But then rule of law has its own violence. It's a transformation of violence into another form, a sublimated form of violence. So instead of two individuals doing violence to each other, the state steps in and says, I will now do violence because I am licensed to do violence. The state, by universal agreement, has the authority to take the life of A who killed B. And with that, it ends. The ends of justice are met. It's not that the state taking the life of A brings any relief to the family of B. But because there is a general agreement, social, political, cultural agreement, that once the state takes the life of A, the aggressor, everything is settled. The family has got justice. What is that justice? I really don't know. And if A had continued to live as a reformed person, which is not unlikely, because once a person involves himself in this kind of grievous violence, his conscience begins to prick him, and that can eventuate into his becoming a changed person, though there is no absolute rule that he would. It's a kind of investment in faith one has to make. So, that's the reason why, for example, in the outlook of Jesus Christ, Jesus says, put down the sword. You have to break that cycle of violence. Don't feed violence. Many people are puzzled that Jesus, first of all, ensures that his disciples accompanying him as he went to the Garden of Gethsemane there to pray, had taken with them two swords. And then when Peter uses him, he says, put down the sword. He who takes the sword shall fall by it. The simple logic is, how can you actually demonstrate that you have no faith in violence unless the means to practice violence is also available? Now suppose somebody attacks you. He holds his revolver at your temple, or maybe directs his revolver at you at a distance of 10 feet. Now if you don't have a revolver in your pocket, all you have to do is to tie your hands and then stand there, tremble, plead, cry, etc. Or run away if you can. there is absolutely no scope for you, no opportunity for you to prove that you have a principled reluctance to resort to violence. Suppose you had a similar pistol or maybe a better pistol, and you decide not to use it. And you say to him, brother, your pistol is pointed to me. I too have a pistol. It's in my pocket. But I will not point it at you because I consider you my brother. If you want to kill me, that's fine. But I will not do a similar harm to you. I can't even think of it. So that actually introduces a new realm of possibility into the mind even of the potential aggressor. And if he has any element of conscience left in him, it's bound to have an impact on him, and very likely he would refrain from the contemplated act of atrocity or violence. There's also the chance that he would pull the trigger, and then you could drop down dead. These are the risks that we have to take. Human life always involves taking risks. You think of the doctors and the nurses and the other technicians who worked in hospitals during the COVID-19 pandemic. How many of them died? There is a risk that doctors and nurses take in order to make medical care available to you. There is a risk that the soldiers of India take when they guard the country and protect its territorial integrity. Life is risky. Any sport, if you're running a marathon, you could drop down dead. There's no guarantee that you'll survive. If you're a mountaineer, some of my students died while trying to climb some of the higher peaks of the Himalayas. Well, it's a risk that they took knowingly that there would certainly be this risk. In fact, every adventure contains within itself this element of risk. And actually these adventure sports are there in order to underline the fact that risk taking is fundamental to human achievement. So, the need to break the shackles of this logic, that action has to be followed with reaction, reaction with further reaction, then create a spiral of this kind of escalating reactions and actions, resulting in bloodshed everywhere and utter loss for everyone, from which no one has ever emerged wiser, better, richer. Everybody ends up a loser. There should be a way out. But the point is, are we bold enough? And this is a question that Count Leo Tolstoy raises. Are you really bold enough, brave enough to believe in the rewards of peace? He says it's far easier to believe in the rewards of war than in the rewards of peace, though everybody in theory agrees that peace is better than war. Nobody really believes that peace is a better option than war. If today somebody comes advocating the way of peace in relation to the problems in West Asia, that person will be laughed at. On the other hand, if somebody comes up with a deadlier weapon than any in the hands of these warring people, that person will be hailed as the greatest hero of our times, and he would be given, ironically, a Nobel Prize for peace, because he can destroy far too many people. That's a conundrum. So, as I said, we have internalized this logic that violence has to be countered with violence and there is no other alternative, because that is what is called natural logic. So, when a person reacts in vengeance to a wrong done to him, he is acting according to the law of nature, because the law of nature is action and reaction, not nature, law of motion. Action and reaction are equal and opposite. That's supposed to be also what you find in nature. That's how these laws of motion are formulated. Action and reaction are equal and opposite. So, if there is a provocative action, there must be a commensurate counter action, Otherwise, you're a good for nothing fellow. Now, that is acting according to the compulsions of nature. But what I have to say here is, whether people like it or not, if you look at the moral evolution of our species, you will find that the moral light dawned in human consciousness only when humankind, at various stages in its evolution, decided to go beyond the limitations of the laws of nature. So, it's a significant moral breakthrough when a person says, I will not react in vengeance. It's a tremendous leap in the moral and spiritual domain when Jesus says, love your enemies. Is such a teaching possible in the present day context? Suppose you go and stand in Palestine, in Lebanon, in Iran, and read these words. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. Or love your enemies and pray for them who persecute you. People would think that you are mad. And yet, the moral evolution, the moral progress of the human species depends entirely on this and not on the perfection of deadlier and deadlier weapons of destruction, whether individual destruction or mass destruction. So at this level, the two pursuits part ways and they are divergent. Faith in violence, faith in warfare, faith in perfecting technologies of destruction will go this way. Faith in the moral destiny of human species will go the opposite direction. And teachings on this plane will seem foolish from the perspective of this plane. So my own struggle is to see how and to what extent the moral insights can be brought into this, and therefore predictably my ideas will come under a lot of ridicule. I'm aware of it. So it's in full cognizance of this that I run the risk of incurring the condemnation of being a stupid fellow who does not know international politics or human realities or how things work in this world. I'm not an expert on any of these things, but I have some very basic elementary school notion about these things. And I do believe that an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth will not work. If it would have worked, there would have been no need to transcend it. As you proceed from the Old Testament, the Mosaic law of an eye for an eye or a tooth for a tooth is this called the principle of equivalence. That is, equivalence between offense and punishment, which was the highest reach of the sense of justice before the time of Jesus Christ. So with Jesus, you have a completely different paradigm of justice. When Jesus says, not an eye for an eye, tooth for, which is the Mosaic principle, Jesus says, love your enemies. He is taking humanity to, or at least he is pointing humanity in an entirely different direction. It's another matter that people may not find it acceptable or may find it utterly stupid or unworkable, totally impractical. But ultimately, in the final analysis, I believe this is the only way forward. The Mosaic idea of an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth will only perpetuate this diabolic chain of bloodshed and hatred and violence. That's why Gandhi, in an inspired moment, said that the dictum, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, will leave a whole nation blind and toothless. It's absolutely true. That's a typical Gandhian style of stating. It's a style that I love. Even as a student, style. Gandhi's style of phrasing ideas. It is simple, so beautiful. It will leave a whole nation eyeless and toothless. So, it's up to you to decide whether that is a better option or the path of ahimsa. And I'm deliberately undertaking this reflection on this day, the 2nd of October, which is Gandhi Jayanti. I think the best way to honor the Mahatma is to reaffirm our faith in the path of ahimsa. And ahimsa, according to him, is not merely refraining deliberately as a matter of free choice from the practice of violence. It's also a positive commitment to truth. The truth is that the two warring factions are ultimately one. They are all members of the same family of God, because interestingly, both are monotheistic religions. Both insist that there is only one God. But because there is only one God, there are two gods, your God and my God. That's a logic I don't understand. Either there is one God, only one God, or there are many gods. If there are many gods, your God can be superior to mine, and my God will feel or can feel suffocated in the presence of your God, and therefore I owe it to my God to eliminate your God, and if your God is to be finally eliminated, I have to eliminate you also. All that logic I can understand. But if you really believe that there is only one God, monotheism, and that God is the creator God, and everything there is has its origin in the will of that God as a creator, then you have to accept the corollary that the other person who is different to you is also a member of the same family. After all, in a nuclear family, if there are two children, one will be very different from the other. I have two children. One is quite different from the other, because difference is part of the logic of life. And he who cannot accept that logic of life is a fool. And if he has a knife in his hand, a rogue. A fool is an unarmed rogue, or a rogue is an armed fool. So, whether it be Israel, whether it be Iran, or whether it be any other country, I would say these are armed fools. These are armed fools, and all that they can contribute to the welfare of humankind is misery, destruction, poverty, deprivation. There is plenty of resource in this world to meet the needs of every human being on planet Earth. But over 2 billion people live in a state of regrettable, lamentable deprivation. More money is wasted on cruelty, on war making, on destruction, than on solving the problems of the people, of human beings. Actually, if 25% of the money invested in the international arms industry and war making, fomenting regional conflicts, can be diverted or invested into projects, undertakings that would solve the problems of humanity, this world will be a paradise. But that would be considered foolish, because we all have internalized this diabolic logic that reposes its faith entirely in violence. And that is why, even in India, the land of pacifist spirituality, even in India, the shortcut to electoral victory for a party is to mount an attack on some other country, surgical strike, and you win an election. That's how stupid we can be. So, we have to wait and see how this plays out. I sincerely hope and pray that wisdom will prevail, and wisdom will prevail on both sides. But I despair of this possibility also because it is most difficult for wisdom to prevail when religion becomes the blindness of the people, which is the tragedy of the people in this region. I say it again and again and again, but for religion, the people of this region would have lived in peace. It is religion that robs the people of this region, the Palestinians and the Jews, the fundamental right to live in peace and mutual amity. Religion is the poison in the existence of these people. They are paying the price for their stupid religiosity, which goes against all the fundamental basic aspects of their own faith. So I can only pray, may God save us from religion, particularly the religion that robs us of our humanity and our capacity to think rationally and humanely. May peace be established in this war-torn region. May the poor people who have suffered enough already be allowed to live in peace. May this misery come to an end. May the spirit of the Mahatma become the light by which the people of this region emerge from this bottomless abyss and begin to lead a normal life. I dream of the day when this would become possible, and my prayer is, may this day come sooner, that we might think it is possible. Jai Hind, and 1,000 cheers to the Mahatma. Raghupati Raghava Raja Ram. Sabko Sanmadi De Bhagavan.